You can run, but you can't hide. You can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. You can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 9 p.m. on a Friday night during the basketball season. And you know what that means. That means we in the building, top of the key. Another great episode. Got some great knowledgeable basketball minds here. And we're going to talk some NBA. We're going to talk a whole lot of it tonight. So right beside me, I got my guy, Coach Dante. I feel like I've seen Coach Dante recently before the show. Not sure where. What's going on, Coach Dante?
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Nice to have. Thank y'all for having me on. Like I say, Mike, my boy Con, man, always an honor to be on with y'all, man. Definitely, especially them round tables, man. We got to do one of them again. But other than that, Kuma came, man. I just saw you by like no more than 5 minutes ago. It's always an honor to be on here with you.
It be like that sometime, man.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It be like that. Mike, what's going on tonight, man?
Whole lot of everything, I guess, huh? Between what's happening with the finals and all the news today. So it's great to be with all you guys, and I'm looking forward to having a great discussion.
Absolutely. And last, but not least, the man, the myth, and the legend himself, the Con Man.
Well,
what's going on, Con?
The OG's in the building. Looking forward to doing the show tonight. Thank God that y'all here with us, and we're gonna have a great show tonight. It might be our last one for a little bit, but we're gonna do the damn thing.
Oh, we got to go to that draft review next week, so we're gonna have at least one more.
Yep.
And you never know, we might pop on from time to time if something big happens. You know how that goes. Just make things pop, man. And we got a few comments here, but we got another guy I want to bring in. One of my fellow Nugget brethren who's joining us for the evening. That
Feels
guy,
so good.
Ian.
Feels so good.
We're up.
So, it's going, man. God, I finally have my voice back from Monday night. It's crazy. It is absolutely pandemonium right now. Christian Brown's doing a signing tomorrow. Jamal Murray's doing one on Tuesday up here. So, and they're doing it by wristband only. So you have to be like one of the first 125 people to show up, and you get a wristband and you get your opportunity to get something signed. So
Nice. And see, that's the kind of things that you get when you're right there, right? I'm not in Denver, Ian is. So, that's that little bit of information. Like wherever you're at, you kind of get a little bit more of those slight things that are happening that you may not see. So we're going to go ahead and hit the comments up real quick here, guys, and then we're going to get started. All right, so Keith says 2 mics and the 2 C's. That's before Ian showed up. So you have to adjust it a little bit, but definitely works. Mikhail Merriweather says, yo, what's going on, Mikhail? We got Cy Jen. What's good, Matt, Coach, Con, and Sim. course, again, before Ian was able to slide up here with us. We got David Burns, who says watching from Cedar Hills, Texas. What's going on, David? And then we got Dylan in the comments with the fires. Gave us quite a few fires, so I appreciate that. And then another one of the OGs from the set, we're gonna call it. That guy, Big Time, Douglas Lewis Brooks, Big Time. What's going on, Big Time? So yeah, guys, a lot happened in the world of sports this week. So I guess we need to start off with what should be the top story. It's not being treated like the top story, but it should be the top story. The NBA champs have been crowned. It's the Denver Nuggets. Yay. First time ever, man. Very excited. But whoever it would be, we get a new champ. That's important. That's big. And it's somebody different, which I love a lot. So Jory's checking in too. Jory, what's up? And David Burns, again, congratulations to your team, the Nuggets, for winning the NBA championship. Appreciate that. And definitely congratulations to those guys who did on the floor. We cheered them as hard as we could from the side, but we couldn't go out there and play with them. So Coach Dante, we already did this once, but why not do it again? Any thoughts on the finals, and then any NBA thoughts you want to slide out for the rest of the season?
Of course, yeah. Let me get my same thoughts that I gave on the last show. So first of all, I want to congratulate, to the Miami Heat. Many people didn't expect them to be in this situation. A lot of people thought they were going to get beat by the Milwaukee Bucks. They lost the playing game to the Chicago. They beat the Chicago Bulls just to get in this situation. But again, they were better as a team than Milwaukee. They were better as a team than the New York Knicks. They were better as a team for the Boston Celtics. Yes, those three teams had talent, but they were better as team-wise. They were better coached. They were better with energy. They were diving on the floor with loose basketballs. They wanted the series more than all those other teams. This is the first series. They were kind of outmatched. But it also proved that they needed one more guy as well. They also proved that they needed one more guy. Bam Adebayo can't be your second best player. He just can't be your second best player. And I also think they need a point guard. Dave Vincent is not a for sure point guard. He's more of a shooter than he is a point guard. Kyle Lowry, he's a bench player at this point of time. So I think they need one more piece. They're not far away. And the bottom of the East is just horrific. Outside of Boston, and Milwaukee, Miami might be the third best team in the Eastern Conference. I'll probably be best with that one more piece they got. But other than that, Denver Nuggets, congratulations, man. Christian Braun was one of my favorite players coming up out of the draft last year, NBA champion, national champion before he got to the Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray proves that he's on another level as well. But I like what Jamal Murray did, though. When they doubled him, he was been a willing passer. Made plays. Whatever Miami did, Denver had an answer for it. When they went to the 3-2 zone, Denver had an answer. When they went to a man-to-man, they had an answer. And Bruce Brown, hell of a player. Just got to give credit to the Denver Nuggets. Everything Miami tried to come with, they did. They countered. They kind of counterpunched them. And Miami just wasn't good enough to beat Denver at the end of the day. Talent kind of overwhelmed them. And Aaron Gordon was really big all series. That game number 4, Aaron Gordon with that jump shot, those jump shots, the rebounding that he got. Michael Porter Jr. didn't make shots, but guess what he did? He went to the basket. He got offensive rebounds. It was just an all around, it was an all around talent show with the Denver Nuggets between Miami Heat. So this was the first series, that Miami actually got out talent, but the better team won the series by a long slot.
Hey, I'm not going to argue with that. Mike, what you got for us?
So a tough act to follow with Coach. My feelings on the series was that, both teams play hard. Miami played extremely hard, gave a lot of energy coming out of the Boston series, where I think that series ends up hurting them down the line, right? They sort of run out of gas as that series goes on. But yes, Denver is the much more talented team. And I do think that there was a coaching advantage coming out of Denver too, where those adjustments that needed to be made, and we've talked about these chess moves that have to take place during a series, right? So Denver had the players to actually adapt to some of those changes and execute them, right? You can suggest those changes all you want, but you have to have the players to execute that. So they had great spot up play from Brown and Braun and all of those guys kind of stepping in when they needed to, right? They needed those players to step up at certain times in different segments during those games, which really drove those wins. I made comments earlier about the last game, which was really kind of a slog where nobody was playing well. I didn't think the game was refereed well. So I was hoping that there wasn't going to be a situation where all of a sudden we're going to drift into another game because of a bad call here and there. But overall, the best team won, right? The best team, the team that had the best talent came out on top. And eventually that's what happens in sports, right? You just have the team with the better talent will kind of emerge in a series. If it's a one-off in a Super Bowl or an NCAA final, those things can get a little fluky every now and again. But in a series, the better teams are going to win. And super happy for the organization, super happy for the fans because, the history that's there is pretty rough coming out of the ABA. Not to get lost on something else, it was great to see David Thompson sitting in the stands that night and all of those guys being happy for the rise of that organization and where they stand now. So it was a great way for the season to end. A new team emerges, and then all of a sudden we start talking about dynasty and the coach wants one more and he's greedy. And that's cool to see, right? That's cool to see a coach stepping up, and that's not the first time he's been outspoken in the series, which is still another unique thing. To take that chance and put his organization on the line we want to hold the line here. We want to actually have another win. We want to have another championship and contend. So that's cool to see. So I'm looking forward to free agency. I'm looking forward to the draft, and I'm looking forward to see what's happening with these teams, down the line the next season.
For sure. So a couple of comments, and then we're going to definitely see what the con man Ian got to say about this as well. So David Burns says Jimmy Butler will come back next year to win the NBA championship. If that other piece happens, like Coach Dante was saying, it's a good possibility. True, that's so right about what he said. And then we've got Kyle. Kyle, what's going on, man? He's like, what up, guys? I appreciate that. David, again, what's going on? Kyle with I'm good. What's up with you? Notoriety Sports Network hitting us with the fire. Appreciate that as well. Loving it all. Keep that chat jumping. That's what we're here for. Con, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, you already know how I roll. First of all, cool. Why you got these two guys on the show when they basically said what I was going to say in the first place? So I'm not happy about that. But first and foremost, I want to give my props to Key Williams on her birthday tonight. Happy birthday, Key. Number one.
Happy birthday, Key.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Number two. The series was good, but we kind of anticipated what was going to happen, what was going to occur. Miami did not have the height to match Denver's height. And Jimmy Butler, although he's considered a superstar, but he's not he's a 1A. And it showed in the fact that Denver, considering their salary cap for the next couple of years, they're going to be a team to contend with. I thought it was a good series, but I'm old school. I love basketball. I love watching it. And unfortunately, Coach and Mr. Mike Simmons took all my stuff away, so I have not too much to say. But other than that, hey, we're good.
Fair enough. Ian, what you got for us?
Where do I even begin? I haven't been old enough to remember the ABA Rockets days or anything like that, but to see some fans that have been with the team since the 60s out, partying Monday night, out there Thursday morning, seeing how much it meant to them. It's crazy to think about where Denver has 7 professional sports titles in the last 25 years. We don't really think about that big time because the Avs have won 3, the Broncos have won 3, and now the Nuggets have their 1. But if you want to go to a lower level, I wouldn't say a lower level, but I guess not as watched. The Rapids have their title since 96. The DU Pioneers hockey team, they have theirs. The Colorado Mammoth, which is indoor lacrosse, they're coming off a title last season. So us here in Denver, we're all just kind of sitting here staring at the Rockies like, what are y'all ever going to do for us at this point? They're the only team that legit doesn't have a title attached to their name. But, I mean, just it was pure elation. I think everybody's finally coming down now that it's been about a week since we clinched it here at home. But trust me, I know for you and me, it's going to go on for a while. But the city itself, it was really cool just seeing the city come together. There were those couple of people who decided to ruin it for one reason or another during the celebration.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. I'm not going to get into that because the way I see it, they don't deserve the airtime for trying to ruin a beautiful thing. But I will give Miami all the credit in the world. I think Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra did everything that they needed to. But I also think that they ran out of gas in the Boston series. And with the Nuggets, everybody says, every team faces adversity, things of that nature. We went 16-4 in the playoffs. We had the second best playoff run since 2000, only behind the 16-17 Warriors who went 16-1.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and people can say that it's a fraudulent championship or whatever. That's the advantage of taking home the first seed and playing who's in front of you. So
Facts. And then we had nothing. We had no control over anything that happened in the Eastern Conference. Right?
exactly.
They had a 1 seed. They had a 2 seed. They had a 3 seed. They had a 4 seed. They didn't get there.
Yep, exactly. But I mean, I'll give all the kudos in the world to Miami.
Yeah.
I still think Eric Spoelstra easily one of the top 2 coaches in the league right now. I still succeed to Greg Popovich being number 1 just because of what he's been able to do over decades of time. But you got to sit here. If you're not a Denver fan, you got to look at what Michael Malone was working with when he took over the team 2 weeks prior to training camp back in 2016, 2017 to where we are today. So, but no, I mean, I couldn't be happier right now. So I finally get to add on to my Nuggets tattoo on my left arm because the tattoo shop said if we win Game 5, we'll add on to anybody's piece for free. So I got to set up that appointment. But, it's a good time out here in the Mile High, that's for sure.
Nice. Yeah, for me, man, Ian took a lot of my stuff too, so I know how you feel, Con.
Right.
But
I can say.
yeah,
I was going to say, how did you expect to not have more to say than what I did when I live out here, man? That's all I got to say. You played yourself on that one.
but I always have more, so that's the good part about it. So for me, man, it was exciting to see. Outside of it being my team, it was exciting to see a team who's never been there hungry for and get their first opportunity. And if you follow me on social media, you see me post like hashtag finish the story quite a bit. People say, "Oh, you're ripping off this." No. The storybook ending. This was it. You've never been to the finals before. You finally get the number 1 seed. You get to the finals. You go through LeBron James and the LA Lakers. You go through Kevin Durant and his team. You go through all of these teams to get there, right? Miami has this amazing run through the Eastern Conference. As Ian said, big shout out to them. I think you look at the end, Jimmy Butler just kind of got gassed, and without him, there just wasn't enough, even with Bam stepping up, to be able to win this series. These were 2 really good teams, but the Nuggets had more talent as well as being just as good of a team as Miami was. I think the best game for the Nuggets was 4. I really was not pleased with Game 3. I'm glad we won, of course. I never say, upset about a loss, but about a win. But I feel like we could have been better. Game 5, we had a great second half. First half, not so much. But hey, it was enough to get the championship, right? It was enough to finish the story and be the champions. And that's all you can ask. All you can ask is for your team to finish when they have the opportunity. No one has the opportunity every year. But when you had it run, when things line up for you, finish the job, finish the story. We did that this year. So very excited about that, man. And I'm also interested to see what happens next year, right? With the Nuggets and other teams. Coach Dante kind of alluded to that. We can go over that a little bit. But we do have a question here that kind of aligns with where I was actually going next anyway. So David asked a question to all of us. Who do you think will be the next in line for NBA championship run next year? So we'll go around. We'll reverse it this time. We'll start with Ian. I think I have an idea who he's going to pick.
I mean,
But go in.
that's the big thing is that if you look at the Nuggets, yes, our main concern is re-signing Bruce Brown. He's on a player option. It is trending about 65% that he is going to go ahead and re-sign. But we still have Christian Brown. We still have Peyton Watson. We still have a lot of our bench depth. We still have Ismail Kamagate coming over from France. And, we do have 2 second-round picks this year as well. So, it's hard for me to say that things are going to go bad for the Nuggets, especially when our starting 5 is still under contract for a minimum of 2 more seasons together, and that's when KCP's due up. But, the big 3, well, big 4 really, of Jokic, Jamal, AG, MPJ, they're guaranteed to be together for the next 3 seasons. I think, if we're able to keep Coach David Adelman as an assistant, it would stink to lose him, but he's such a good coach. He deserves to finally get a head coaching gig somewhere in the NBA if there is a spot open. But I really do feel like, if we can stay healthy like we were this season, I don't see why we can't run it back. But if I'm going to the East, I would say Boston. I really like their chances. I do think they need to get a little more depth other than your Jaylen Brown and your Jason Tatum. I feel like they're going to run it back one more season. But, their starting 5 outside of Tatum and Brown, the other 3 players that were starting for them were ranked in the lower 5 of your 30 starting. Thanks, Kat.
You got a little visitor here, huh?
Yeah, no, we just moved up to a Centennial, so she's still getting used to the new place for sure. So, but yeah, no, Boston, they've got a couple issues that they need to fix as far as depth and having a little bit better position play, especially from other players outside of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But I would say Nuggets Celtics right now, but obviously that could change with free agency.
Fair enough. We got a comment from Mo. That's a strong panel evening fan. What's going on, Mo? Appreciate you checking in with us again. Mo be here with us every week, talking a little basketball. Con, what's your thoughts, man?
Well, you know how I roll.
I do.
Yeah, you do. First of all, I think in the West, Denver, because of their salary cap concerns, they're set for about 3-4 years. So I think Denver's going to be in the mix for a while in the West. As far as the East, let me tell you all this real quick. If Miami is able to get Bradley Beal, they're going to be the one to deal with in the East. You know, I don't like the Celtics, but I think if Miami gets Bradley Beal, there's going to be some changes. But anyway, Denver, they're in a good situation, financially wise, salary cap wise. Denver is going to be a team to deal with for a long time. But in the East, sorry, fellas, I got to go. If Miami gets Bradley Beal and another big, things are going to happen. That's my take.
What you got, Mike?
So yeah, it's hard to go against with Denver for out of the West next year and for the next coming years. That's just hard. It's an easy take for me. Out of the East, I would tend to lean towards Boston if they can solve a couple of things. And we've talked about this before. From the point guard side, we get a true point guard and start to have that distributor. I think we're better off. A little bit more flexibility up front. I just think that team with the coach that they had this past season, I think there's just a lot of growth, a lot of addressing a large learning curve with them too, with the new coach. I think once that he gets a second year, I think that gets better. I think he's getting a lot of confidence from the organization as far as where he is in his placement. So I think that suits them better. I'm not sure about Miami because I do think that there was this look with them that they were, again, they were out of gas at the end. And I just think too many things have to land perfectly with them for them to succeed. Butler's another year older, a lot of miles on that between he and the center as far as the minutes that they played in the series. That's tough. That's tough to recover from as you get older. I would still look at Milwaukee a little bit, right? I think you have Antetokounmpo in the middle. I mean, how are you going to walk away from that? They still have some pieces they need to address. So I wouldn't look away from them. So I would think Milwaukee and Boston out of the East and Denver out of the West.
All right, Coach.
Obviously, I'm going to go with Denver in the West because in the West, it's a lot of what ifs. It's a lot of what ifs in the West. Like we all know the Clippers not going to never be healthy. We already know this is their last year, will never ever be healthy. Much as I rave about them, if that team stay healthy, they can be borderline Western Conference. We get to the point they would never play. They would never play as full strip again, no matter who's on the court. Paul George can be on the court, but Kawhi Leonard can be off the court. Kawhi Leonard can be on the court. Paul George can be off the court. So this year will be the last two times you see these guys play together. Again, I think that'll break that team up. Dallas, you're not serious about them. Kyrie Irving can leave again. Luka can be back in the same situation again same situation by himself again. Traded away all 8 pieces. Sacramento need to see one more year up out of them. See if they're for real. Need to see another year up out of them. Lakers, you can probably put them in a city. As long as they got LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I think they can be fine. But I don't think they would be a threat to Denver at all. So I will have to take Denver and Golden State. I think they will win, but I don't think they will be a championship team anymore. I think that dynasty is almost closing into fruition. But in the East, you got 3 legit teams. You got just obviously 3 legit teams. You got Miami, you got Milwaukee, and you got Boston. Milwaukee, now they still have Giannis, but will they sign Middleton and Lopez back? That's the key for them. Boston also got Grant Williams. Probably not going to come back with them. But the key will they sign Jaylen Brown back? They got to make a decision on him really, really quick. Now, Miami, to me, I think that with one more, I think they need 2 guys. I think they need a point guard, and I think they need someone like a Bradley Beal or something like that. But I do think they need another point guard as well to control the point guard situation. The 76ers, they're a threat to nobody in the Eastern Conference, no matter what it is. They're the Cowboys of the NFL. Second round, you know what they are. So they're not a threat to anybody. Atlanta is a flat out mess. Right now. Toronto building team, they're breaking that team up soon. So Cleveland playoff team, I think nothing more out of them. They can get better. Now New York, that's another team. That's a wild card for me if they can get another piece as well. That's a wild card for me. But I'm willing to say every superstar that comes out or that's on a trading block, watch out for Pat Riley because he's going to always be in that mix and he's not going to be afraid to pull a plug. So I'm gonna go Miami up on that. But the rest of the East is you're not sold on. Atlanta's just a flat out mess. They would never get it done. And you're definitely not sold on Philadelphia. They're the Cowboys of the Eastern Conference. That's all it is. They're the Cowboys of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I know how you feel now, Mike.
Yo,
you got to go behind Coach Dante. Yeah, man. He went hard with it. We got a few comments that'll give me a chance to break it up here for a second. So David says Celtics are good and they're hungry. Agreed. Kyle says the Celtics made great additions to the coaching staff. That is a very important point to make because the coaching staff is always very important. I think their coach first year, he got outcoached a lot, right? But I think he's going to learn from that and be better moving forward. Mo says right now today Denver is set to repeat with the depth around their core 4 in the East. I like the Bucks with some added depth, but never sleeping on Pat Riley. Hey, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
David says Miami had me, and they're going to be back in the playoffs. Kyle also says I like Milwaukee and Boston in the East. Cleveland could be intriguing. Kyle also says I can't take the Knicks seriously if Randall is still a top option.
And it's scarily true because everybody thinks that, Julius Randle is a top 1 or maybe a 2, but you watch the way that he plays, you stick him on any of these other teams, he becomes a 3 or a 4 very quickly. I mean, shoot, you put him on Boston, he's instantly a 3. Miami, he's a 3. Denver, you want 5, 6, 7, 8. Where do you want on that? So, I mean, I think he's absolutely right in saying that New York, they need somebody. I really think they need somebody to come accompany Jalen Brunson up there. just try to make a solid threesome and then just kind of build out their depth there. But having Julius as your one, we've seen this too many times. It just doesn't work.
True.
Well,
and David Burns says, "Oh, go ahead, Con. No, go ahead, Con.
If you look at the NBA teams, the way the CBA is structured beginning next year, you cannot have 3 max players. So therefore, you have to make adjustments. Now, if I was the Knicks, Randall is not our number 1. What you need to do is what Denver's doing. They're building from the draft. They're building from free agents. They're building from the way you're supposed to be doing. A lot of these teams right now, when things don't go right, they want to make quick changes. It don't work. It don't work. It don't work. You need to have self-stability, and you need to have teams that believe in each other. And I think Denver is in the right spot. But I think with Pat Riley, watch out. Watch out for Pat Riley. He ain't going to be dealing with it. Watch out for Bradley Beal. Time y'all.
Now,
So
go
ahead.
just one thing that I want to mention here with the Bradley Beal situation, he's going to be commanding a good solid $36-37 million a year.
Yep.
Miami Heat are going to have to move some of their bench depth in order to keep him. And then I honestly feel if that were to happen, we're going to be looking at a Phoenix of the East situation where your starters are going to be fantastic, but your bench depth is not going to be up to snuff to keep continuing the pace that you need to be in order to get to where you need to go. But that's
Good
just
point.
my thoughts on that.
Great point.
Can I follow up on the Denver thing real quick?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So Michael was talking about what Denver has done as far as the draft. And I think we talked about this on one podcast where Denver is unique, right? That they were patient with their coaching staff and they were patient with their strategy. And following Michael's point here, most organizations don't want to be patient. They're looking for the instant fix because they've got revenues they have to attain to, and they've got salaries they have to take care of. So Denver is sitting out there as sort of a unicorn as far as how they approach the season and how they approach their strategy. You don't find that in sports in general, right? Most organizations are looking really short term. They're not a long window and not a long leash on some of this stuff. So if we're looking at Denver, I'm not really sure who has the appetite in a professional sport at this point to really take the long view and have that kind of strategy. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Good point.
Just
Yeah, that's true. So
Yeah.
David says here that
Go ahead.
I slightly disagree with that Mark Cuban needs to put more money on Kyrie Irving to help out Luka Doncic. They just need another big man that can grab and rebound, someone similar to what Nikola Jokic is. So the only thing I'll say to that is there isn't a guy similar to what Nikola Jokic is. That's the thing. I think Mike kind of swayed to that quickly then, right? It's not really another guy that does what he does the way that he does it. But if you can get a guy that has decent passing skills, a guy that can grab rebounds and can put some points up in the paint for you. There's a guy that actually was on Denver that now has a ring that did get a lot of time in Thomas Bryant that could be that for somebody possibly next season. I'm high on Thomas Bryant. I like what he brings. We also had so Mo, this is what I was laughing at, y'all. Mo says Randall was the Cowboys of the All-Star players. That one got me. That one was funny. David says Bradley Beal need to come to Dallas. I have 2 places I think he's going to go. Actually, one, and I have a place that I think Jaylen Brown's going to go. I think those are going to, if these 2 things happen, those 2 teams are going to shoot up where everyone thinks they can be. Ryan says, I don't understand why Heat going for Dame or Beal. Getting a solid center would have more contribution and the chances to win than getting a one-way player. That's a very valid point, Ryan. The Heat do need a true big because Bam cannot handle the bigs in the league. He's just not built that way. He's more of like a power forward that can play center in today's game, but he's more, to me, always been like a power forward. And he meant one-way power point guard. And then Kyle comes back with the Denver approach, works in certain markets. OKC is building the same way. So it has to work if you're in the smaller market teams because you're never going to get the big guys to come there. So I'm going to go Denver in the West. My secondary team in the West, this might shock a lot of people. I'm going to go to New Orleans Pelicans because if they can get Zion healthy and motivated to play basketball for at least one season with the other talent they have on that team would be a good challenge even for Denver. And I mean, Denver could still beat them, but I think that would be a team that you'd be like, oh, this team has a good chance because too much versatility. They got a lot of length there as well. And if they can get Zion healthy, of course, and that's the big thing. Without him, it's a playing team. With him, it's a much better team because it allows everyone else to do kind of what you were saying with Julius Randle, step back into their natural positions.
Yeah.
So then David says, Ryan does have a great point. Kyle says Zion needs to take care of his off-the-court stuff first. So Zion's off-the-court stuff, as long as it doesn't affect him on the court, I'm not worried about it, because it's his own drama of his own making. So he can figure out how to handle that. He hasn't broken any rules. He might have broken a lot of people's trust in him, but he hasn't broken any rules or anything. So, but you do make a point. You don't want that lingering into the season, Kyle. That is true. You want it to have some type of resolution before then. So, two quick things for me. If the New York Knicks were to get Bradley Beal, that changes that team, right? That moves it up in your mind. If the Boston Celtics sway and trade Jaylen Brown to the Miami Heat, that changes Miami a lot because truthfully, Miami doesn't big, but you could go out and get like someone's backup, or you could go out and get a guy like from the G League that, still raw offensively, outside of 5 to 10 feet, but can dunk, can run the floor, can block shots, can rebound, and you could get him in that lineup, and that would help out. But if those two trades happen, I'm putting those teams at the top. But as things stand now, without those major moves happening, I would definitely go with Milwaukee and probably Boston as 1 and 1A in the East. And then David says Zion Williamson may come to the Sixers for James Harden. So James Harden is not going to the New Orleans Pelicans. James Harden will put on another fat suit and get man out of there in a week. He is not going to do that. Oh man. But there have been some rumors about Zion Williamson and him possibly being included in a trade with the 14th pick to move up to number 2 to draft Scoot Henderson with the Charlotte Hornets. So since we got a little bit of time to talk about it, we'll start with you, Coach Dante. Let's do it this way. Any draft trades that you're hearing about that you think may be a win-win for both teams?
I think depends on, like I was saying, depends on what happened to Portland, who they pick. Out of Scoop Henderson and Brandon Miller. I just think if they pick the Scoop Henderson route, which I think personally, when you talked about on last show, I think the Charlotte Hornets should get that. Would be a good combination with him and LaMelo Ball in the same backcourt. That would be a perfect combination. But it all depends on what Portland does with that number 3 pick. If they pick Brandon Miller, then I think everything will be fine. But if they go Scoop Henderson, you got a backcourt of Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, and all of a sudden Dame. I think that's when the table will turn right now with Damian Lillard getting out, because now you got your backcourt of the future, you got your point guard of the future, your backcourt of the future. Now you got Dame. Now you got Dame who wants to be a part of a playoff scenario team and a championship winning team. Now you got him in the fold. So now I think that's probably a trade that teams were willing to come up and get from Damian Lillard. That's only if it depends on what Portland does with that pick. But the draft starts with Charlotte. Who would they pick? Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson? I think the draft starts with Charlotte. Who they gonna pick? That might suggest who Portland will come up with.
Fair enough. So Mike, before you go, just got a few quick comments here. So Sajin says no, Zion is not. I don't think he is either. So Kyle asked, what would Boston get from Miami in that trade? So I'm going to take the slightly 4 or 3-letter network response here. When I give this to you, it'll be good, but it'll make you chuckle as well. So I think the package has got to be Tyler Hero, one of your role players, and then draft compensation. like I did that draft compensation. Not committing anything but draft compensation. And then David says Pelicans are trying to take the next step for a playoff push for next year. Definitely so, man. They got to figure things out. All right, Mike, floor is yours.
So I do think, I think that the Zion situation, I think, is a lot of smoke. And I don't think there's anything happening there. I think it's trying to get his attention so he can hopefully align some things. And what's interesting about that situation with him, apparently there's no relationship between him and the organization at all. That they don't speak. There's a giant disconnect there. So that would put into question, is there a trade going forward? And I just want to follow up on the Beal situation. So he has a no trade clause. And I'm not really sure, how that comes into play quite a bit, I think, as far as any flexibility that any organization is going to have, plus the big payday with him. So that just creates all kinds of barriers to actually execute a trade. And I agree with Coach as far as what's happening is where is the linchpin to the draft? Yes, it's coming out of Charlotte, because if you tend to believe the Zion trade, that's where he's going for the player that Charlotte may take. So I think there's a lot of restrictions in that trade, and a lot of the restrictions in the conversation is what's really taking place with each player in each situation. So the free agency thing actually comes into play, I think, quite a bit with what other teams are actually looking for, what they can afford in going into the draft. So I think that's a major issue for me looking at the draft. But the Portland situation with Lillard is interesting because, at one point I thought, maybe there's a move there with the Celtics again trying to kind of create that situation for purity at the point guard a little bit and actually get a scorer there and, a guy looking for a championship and actually to make his play in the playoffs, because he hasn't had that kind of deep run in him. So, I'm looking at both of those situations in Portland and in Charlotte as to what's really going to take place. And those seem like they're the stepping stones going forward for the entire draft.
Okay. Con man.
Well,
Did they get you again, Con man?
you got me getting. First of all, the two big trades, obviously, are Beal and Dame. They both have no trade clauses in their contract.
Mm-hmm.
So Dame seems like he's not going anywhere unless something happens. As far as Beal, he has a no trade contract as well, but I think he's able to move because he wants to get out. But you know something? We're not going to know what's going to happen until right before the draft, because those moves, something will be made before the draft. Guaranteed. Once that draft happens, then you'll see what things are going to materialize. But in my opinion, something's going to happen before the draft. I don't think Dame's going anywhere, but I think Beal will go somewhere. My hope is Miami, but I have a strong feeling something's going to happen before the draft, and then you see moves being made, trades being made, picks being made. It's going to happen, but before the draft, watch out. Something's going to go down.
Okay. Ian, you all right over there, man?
Yeah. Tonsils are still recovering from Monday night, man. Tell you what.
Too much partying?
Just a little bit. I
Me
won't
too.
even front on
Me
that.
too. Me
I won't
too.
even front. I got videos for days from that party that, I love it. No, I think you guys are right. I think consensus number one, we all agree that it's going to be Wembanyama going to the Spurs. And think, Khan was on the right path in that we might see a trade before the draft involving Zion Williamson. I think because New Orleans, right now, Zion just entered his first year of his 5-year 194. If they really don't feel like Zion's the guy, why not get out of it right now and still get a haul back? So, you might be able to pull some 3-way trades, something of that nature. We could see him obviously end up in Portland with Dame, but Portland would basically have to implode just to make that happen. Charlotte, you might be lucky Obviously, you know that number 2 pick would have to come back to New Orleans in that case, but we could see LaMelo and Zion there. I know people are shaking their heads at it, but, I think it was Mike that was talking to the point where there's no communication between Zion's camp and the Pelicans.
Mhm.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Even with all this off the court issues with whoever the heck he's sleeping with this week. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that will come into the locker room and that will affect the locker room vibes, and obviously cool. We see it in Denver where if somebody doesn't fit the vibe, they are very much cast out very quickly, traded out, i.e. Bones Highland, moving him to the Clippers where he thought life was so much better. I think New Orleans may be going that route, especially with a massive contract like this. You get him moved and say you get the number 2 or the number 3 pick, you're still sitting there with a good, solid, maybe $35 million going into free agency. You could really build the team in New Orleans using that money. I just feel like you could get more for less, if that makes sense.
It does. We got a few comments here. Zion will be great with the Rockets.
No.
He would not. Coach Dante, if he was here right now, he would not be happy with that one. Did you make that
That's
one,
why he
Coach
walked
Dante?
away.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this one back up there for you, Coach Dante. Zion will be great with the Rockets.
Oh, he can wish it ain't gonna happen. He can wish
I know
that.
that's right. So Sajin gives us a little WNBA update. Mercury 55, Mystics 75, 925 in the fourth. So little sister league information. David hits us with Zion will be good playing with Mikal Bridges and Clint Capella. Possibly depending on where they're at. David also hits us with that's for the Rockets. And
I feel like he's trying to manifest Zion going to Houston for some reason.
It does feel like that. And then he says Beal for Dallas Mavericks. I don't see Bradley Beal wanting to go to Dallas and play with.
No.
Yeah, I don't see him wanting to go play with Doncic. It takes certain type of players to play with a guy like Doncic. And then David says, true that, Ian. So I will say this to Ian's comment real quick, right? So yeah, the off the field stuff could bleed onto the court, but they could be like, hey man, we want a little relaxation for the year too. Can we meet some friends and do a little team bonding? Can always happen too. Just saying. Dylan says they said Beal in Sacramento is heating up. Beal with Fox and Bonus is nice. That is true. My only question is, how much do they want for him? Because I have heard those rumors as well, Dylan. I was actually going to talk about those next, so appreciate that. David says, yeah, I want Zion to go to the Rockets. But yeah, I'm gonna throw Dylan's coming back up here. So a lot of talk about Beal and Sacramento and him agreeing to waive the no trade clause. So the important piece of this is we can speculate all day, right? But it has to be a team that the player wants to go to. If you're talking about a guy like Beal, a guy like Dame who has that no trade clause. Correct. It's very important in any contract because then you control where you go. You control your destiny. So it seems like Beal would not mind going to Sacramento, and with Fox and Arvydas, not Arvydas, Domantas Sabonis, that would be a nice little pairing there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be interested at all. I think that you could realistically make that work.
So Dylan says, according to Gene Walzak, he said Washington ain't gotta want nothing for Beal just to drop his contract. I would definitely disagree. I heard that comment. I don't think that's quite accurate from my end as a business deal. If you're going to have the kind of player leaving your team, you're not going to cut him. So you're going to want to get some nice compensation. I don't know what that package would be, what Washington's looking at. Obviously, most of it, you're probably going to want draft capital or guys like on expiring contracts so you can save cap space. But yeah, I think there would be a little more than just dropping the contract and smoking a pancake. Dylan, I'm gonna have to go that route on that one. I think that's the route you were going, but yeah, I'm gonna have to follow you down that route. So next, guys, we got some news popping around the NBA. Lots of news, like Mike was talking about. So I'm just gonna start off with one. You guys can comment on that, and then you can add whatever else you'd like. So that way, we can kind of get what's on everybody's mind, as we go down the line with the NBA news. So I'll start with the Ja Morant penalty. So Ja got 25 games. For those who may not have seen the information, I haven't seen all the information as to exactly what the suspension was for, right? So once those details come out and we kind of get whatever this more information that we were told that the NBA gathered, we'll be able to comment on that a little bit deeper. But it's interesting for me because it's enough games, and me and Coach Dante talked about this earlier. This is enough games where he's not going to be able to make an all-NBA team this coming season. So I think that's important when realizing the number of games that he got and why it's such a kind of like abstract number based on how many NBA games there are in a season, right? Like 20, 40, 42, whatever. But 25, why that specific number, was chosen. So Coach Dante, if you want to add to that, you can. And any other one you want to talk about, let's get it.
I mean, like I say, it's pretty. Without more, I look at it, it's pretty fair. Thought he should have got more. Because again, he supposed to learn. But last year, he did end up doing it 2 more times after he ended up taking a couple of days off after coming back. So I'm not mad at the 25. So I think it's pretty fair. I thought it should have been more though, but I think it's pretty fair.
Yeah, and David says I've heard that in regards to the Washington situation. Dylan also says that my Pacers would be crazy with Beal pairing him with Halliburton and Mathurin. I mean, yeah, that would not be bad. And Dylan also says that supposedly the players' union is highly against the terms of the suspension. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to know the details. Yeah, I am too, because it's kind of, if you're doing it without the details, you can kind of talk about it. But without the details, it's kind of hard to be 100% for or against it, just because that's what it is. And David does echo my sentiment. Ja will miss out on the bonus for games played in the regular season. Yep. So that, and I'm not necessarily against that based on what we hear, but I want to hear how the decision was made first, and then we can roll from there. All right, Mike, it's on you, man.
So a little bit about that story. So I don't think, I'm disappointed with the suspension. I thought it would be more. I thought we were looking at half of the season. But apparently the Players Association weighed in on this, that there was heavy negotiations with the Players Association in watching what was taking place. Granted, they come out with a statement tonight that they unacceptable and so on, but they were shoulder to shoulder with the commissioner as far as where this was going, because I think the initial reaction was it was going to be a much more significant suspension. But also, there's a lot of baggage here. Aside from these 2 incidents, which are pretty bad, there's other incidents where it took place outside of the stadium with some police officers. So there's at least 3 other situations that this player and the people that are around him are involved with. So I think the totality of those situations weighed in heavily with the commissioner. And I think there was some smoke that was blown from him in that statement where he said, I don't want to make an announcement and distract from the finals and so on. Well, he already distracted from the finals by making that statement. So there's a lot more here, I think, that comes into the decision as opposed just looking at the 2 incidents. I think there's probably 5 or 6 that the commissioner had to look at and say, look, we've got a real issue here we have to deal with. There's an entourage situation here. Apparently there was a shooting at one place or another gun was present in another situation. So there's a lot here. And I don't think it's as simple as, there's just that one situation is a repeat offender. I think there's a lot. And I think, unfortunately, that player hasn't learned anything as far as what was really, in front of him. And so the responsibilities that he has, and we've talked about this before, those responsibilities are pretty heavy between salary and expectations and endorsements and so on. So hopefully this player gets the right treatment and the right help, and it's a sustainable situation for him and for that organization. Because if it's not, then you've lost him, and that organization is just going to spin out of control, and you're not going to be able to actually right that ship for a little while. And that's the collateral damage, I think, is sitting right in front of everybody in that organization on, okay, what's going to happen here? Granted, 25 games doesn't knock them out of the playoffs, doesn't hurt their chances to contend, but it does paint that organization as far as what they're dealing with, how they're dealing with this, and how the player is dealing with it, and that's going to hang over them. There's going to be a large hangover for this for the entire season and for as long as that player is in the league, is unfortunately.
I dig that, Con.
Well, you know, what y'all said is very true. I can't argue with what y'all said, but I'm going to come from a different point of view, maybe. I'll call him a kid. He's 21 years old. He's never been convicted of anything. What he did was obviously wrong. Old school that I am, he should be punished to the fullest. But I also think that if Memphis had someone who was more of a mentor, like a Chris Paul, or someone to direct him to become a professional, I think that would have made a difference. But at the end of the day, 25 games, that's $700 million. Now, we're going to talk facts. That's over $700 million. So I look at it from that point of view as well. I think his ass needs to be sit down, and he needs a mentor or someone watching over his, obviously his parents ain't doing the damn thing. He needs someone to correct him. But he's at that age where he can make a change. He can make a difference. He can show the NBA, okay, I messed up. Let me show you what I can do. So I feel, me being old as I am, that give the man a chance. I know he messed up 4 or 5 times. Give him a chance, see what he can do. Because think about it, he's one of the faces of the NBA. If he can overcome what he's overcome, what positivity that can show to the NBA. So my words is that the man messed up. He should be punished. 25 games, $700 million. Think about it. The contracts, the shoe contracts, all the endorsements he's had. How much does he have to suffer? Let the young man learn from some elders, some mentors, some people who are going to watch out for him and really care for him, because he was, man, still might be the face of the NBA. That's all I'm saying. What he did was wrong. We all know that. He messed up big time. But look how many people have messed up before, and they've gotten less. So on my point being, he needs to be taught a lesson, but he needs to have help and mentors to help him through his journey. He needs someone to help him become a professional basketball player. Enough said.
All right, Ian.
I don't know how exactly I'm supposed to follow that one up, but I think, honestly, I feel like it's a little bit of a lighter sentence. Personally, I was expecting it to be a half season or more, only because of, he has, he's made his couple of mistakes, but you also look at the way he apologized for the first time for his incident here in Denver, and you could tell that it was written by an AI bot, and it almost feels insincere to what he wrote that day when he's popping up again. And I understand that, yes, he's blocked the friends that are supposedly in that video with him on that IG Live, but who's to say that that's going to change the behavior? I think also, Khan was mentioning the money. It goes from $80,000 a game to over $300,000 a game that Ja Morant is sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes out to about $7.6 million because of this new rookie Supermax contract. But another thing to look at this, though, Ja Morant may be gone, but people do tend to forget that in the 2 seasons that these last couple seasons where Ja Morant has missed games, the Grizzlies have gone 34-15 without Ja Morant. So this could be a very telling story one way or the other, these first 25 games. Say if, we see Memphis go like 17-8, 18-7, could there be a possibility where Memphis says, Ja, we appreciate what you've done, but you've just become too much of a liability. Our team is running better without you being the head point or the head pin. You know that some team out there may pay for it, but, I really don't think the Grizzlies are going to fall off. I do hope that Ja does get the help that he's claiming that he's getting, and I hope that we do see him back on the court. I mean, he's one of the best players out there. When he's out of legal trouble, he's one of the reasons I'll tune into a Memphis Grizzlies game. I love watching his game, but if he can't get his act together, why should we keep rewarding him with more chances?
Well, you have to remember this. Two of the biggest pieces of their success, of Memphis' success when he's not playing, are Tyus Jones, who is a free agent, and Dylan Brooks, who they are jettisoning. So I don't think we're going to see this team be as successful without him as they were with those pieces. I think you have to realize that we're in a situation where he is an important piece of that team. He is the best player on that team by far. And especially with some of those other pieces possibly being gone, Memphis could decide they want to get rid of him. But I'll tell you right now, there would be a line around the corner of teams saying, hey, do some dumb stuff off the court. We're going to get you somebody in here to help you. We're going to work with you. Come on over here. We'll take that contract and that money because this guy's a star. There's the on-the-court guy. I said this earlier, and then there's the off-the-court guy. On the court, Ja Morant is amazing. He's great. He's wonderful. Off the court, Ja Morant needs some work. Khan hit it on the head. Mentorship. T needs to be like, you know what, man? I know you my son. I know you grown. I know you the money maker and everything, but you got to calm this down, bro. You got to be smart with what you're doing. He needs to say, you know what? I've been around some guys that have gotten me in bad situations. I need to get away from those guys. He needs to also seek out a mentor, right? And say, look, man, maybe a guy like Steven Jackson, maybe a guy like what's my guy named Matt
Barnes.
Yeah, Matt Barnes, Meta World Peace, some of those guys that had some difficulties, some things going on in their career that can kind of help you, get through those things. Even a guy like a Charles Barkley, maybe, just
Agent Zero.
The old heads. What's that, Kyle?
Agent Zero.
Yeah. Hilbert, I like to call him. But yeah.
One thing that I want to
he's been through a worse situation. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I want to tie to your comment there, Cool. You're mentioning a lot of veteran players or players that have been in the league for a long time. Memphis they just don't have that on their roster right now. There's no true
that's why you got to go outside.
Exactly.
But I think what's his name? What's my guy? The center that's hurt is probably the real OG on the team.
Adams.
What's his name?
Yeah,
Steven Adams. Yeah. But even that, I think he has to go out and find his own, not team of related mentors, just guys that's like, look, man, I've been through some things when I was playing. There's some things that we can work on together, and some things that we can do. So I think there's definitely a route that they could take, but you have to be smart. He hasn't been smart because he acknowledged that what he did he felt was wrong, and he was going to go get some help. Then he came back and he did something similar again. So you have to have a more harsher punishment when you kind of do the same thing again, whether you agree with the punishment or not. And I don't necessarily agree that it should have been 8 games to begin with, but that's what it was. You accepted that, the Players Association accepted it, so this was going to be more. I thought we were looking at half a season minimum when he came out with the comments about, we found out more information. So now, like I said, I want to see all the information used to make this decision, because if this is so much horrible information, how we only get 25, and if you kind of overshot the information, how we get 25? Just curious how we got to that number. But like I said, more comments will come out about that, and we'll be able to dive a little bit more into that. So a couple more comments here. So David says the suspension comes with conditions following Ja's return. I hope this will inspire Ja to get his head out of his butt and realize what he's on the verge of losing. He's jeopardizing a wonderful opportunity. Then lastly says the fact that Ja Morant didn't get charged is why I think 25 games is fair. I mean, it can be, right? It just all depends on everything. And again, we don't have everything yet, but we knew it was going to be a suspension. Kind of shocked that it was only 25 games. It kind of feels like if you were going to do 25, you could have just did 20, gave him 62, let him have an opportunity to get things. But it's like you purposely picked a number that was high enough to make sure he couldn't get certain things and that there was a certain dollar threshold that he would miss. So that's just interesting to me on how that decision was made. But we'll flip gears again here, guys. So we got to talk a little NBA draft. So let's do something a little different, right? If I do the same thing all the time, it gets boring. Any 5 players that you want to discuss in the draft? We'll start with you, Mike. Any 5 players in the draft that you want to discuss that player and what team you think should pick them?
Well, like the kid from Arkansas, I like, and I think that may be a good pick for, I think that's Portland, or
Brandon
Charlotte.
Miller?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like him, and I'm sort of drifting away from the kid from Alabama because I think there's some baggage there, and I'm not really sure how that works out in the draft. But I do like him. I think there's some nice fits for him in those 2 organizations. So that's pretty easy for me, though. I'm struggling with the rest of this because I really didn't do too much studying on this, unfortunately. But the situation with Zion and what's going to take place there, as far as if there's a trade, that intrigues me somewhat as far as how that plays out. We talked about that earlier. So I do think there's some opportunities there with those 2 situations that look like it starts to change. And I want to go one step away from the draft real quick, and I'll come back to it. I'm also intrigued as far as what's taking place with Jordan and walking away in the ownership change there. I do think it's interesting as far as it's taking place now. You and I talked briefly earlier about all the news that came out today. As soon as the finals are over, all this news comes out. So I wonder what that looks like for them as far as strategy goes, and what other moves are going to take place with new owners coming in. Does that impact their administration as far as strategy in the draft? Or are they going to leave that alone for the time being and just trying to create and have some stability there before they actually undo anything? But I think the inclination with new ownership is, at least when we talked about this at one point regarding what's taking place in Phoenix, is that guy wants his hands on everything. So I wonder what that looks like for Charlotte, and how immediate is that move, and how much impact does that ownership have as far as what that looks like for this draft and for their future. So I'm going to leave it at that as far as my knowledge about the draft at this point.
All right, so I'll give you a guy that I'm sure you at least have some passing knowledge of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the power forward from UCF, Taylor Hendricks.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think he should go? I mean, so I'm not looking at like, second pick here or whatever. Mm-hmm. A player, a team. Where do you think he should go? If you could pick what you think would be a great fit for him, he's long, athletic. He's 6'8", 6'9". He shoots the 3 at almost 40%, right? One of the better 3-point shooters, especially of the forwards in a draft. Versatile, and could be a good foundational piece somewhere. Do you think there's a place that may be a great fit for him?
I'm thinking Cleveland.
Okay.
I'm thinking Cleveland just because of what they're trying to build there, and that particular player's skill set. And again, we're talking about stretch positions at this point. So I think that would be a nice fit for him and a nice fit for that organization. Because I do like what they're building there. And I think with some luck and some opportunities, that might be the second tier team in the East that might make some noise. So that'd be a nice fit for him, I think, there.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So, Con Man, what about you, sir?
Well, the person you mentioned, he's not even on the top 30 rankings as of right now.
Actually, he is,
And
sir.
you may be right. You may have more information than I have. But anyway,
Yeah.
if he is, of course, with the length, you want someone like, again, Miami needs depth. They need height. They need some rim protector. So I would kind of lean towards someone like a Miami or someone, especially with the structure that they have.
Mm,
I would lean like towards a Miami or maybe, shoot, that's tough. Maybe kind of like like a Charlotte or you know what I mean, something like that. With his length and like you say, he's a rim protector. He can score, but what's funny, y'all, is out of the top 10 picks, 4 or 5 are projected to be out of the G League. That to me is amazing.
hmm
That is amazing. So your man there, he seems like I don't really know much about him. He's not in the top 30 that I have, but with his length, I think he could be a help to like a San Antonio or maybe Memphis or someone like that. Again, I don't really know much about him, cool, so I really can't give an honest opinion. But
Well, I
someone
can
that,
give you a
that
little bit
size
more
and length,
information. Yeah, I can give a little
well,
bit more information real quick, Con. He's
you
he's a
can.
fast rising prospect, but he's been in the top. He's in the top 10 in most. He's a top 10 pick in most updated mock drafts. He's from UCF. He was a freshman, so he played 1 year of college basketball. Um,
Ah, okay. Cool. I don't like that only because as a freshman, what
yeah,
I'm old school. As a freshman, you have to learn on the run. As a freshman, how many freshmen do you know that have left collegiate basketball and made a major contribution after 1 year? Then go again. There are some, but how many, cool? As you look
you're
at
right.
those who have paid the price, went for that 4 years of education, coaching, experience. You go in there as an NBA prospect after your first, most, you're not going to be able to contribute too much as a first
Yeah,
year
not that
player.
first year. Agreed. Agreed. So I'm gonna give you someone else, Con, that you should know a little bit more about.
Give me cool, give me cool.
The Thompson twins, Amin and Asur. Where should they
Oh,
go?
okay.
The guys
Oh,
from the guys we're talking about from the overtime elite, one of the G League places. But what about those two guys? Or where should those two guys go?
cool. You got me on this one. Okay, well, it depends upon obviously the draft number, but the Twins are they're tough to deal with. Matter of fact, I'm trying to remember the last Twins that came to the NBA. Wasn't it the Mobley brothers? If I'm correct, I may be wrong. But anyway, they would be a great addition to whatever team that they get drafted by. Uh, they're very talented. I think it again depends who has the drafts and what is needed by per team. Every team obviously has their big ass board and what they need, guards, forward, centers, and they have to go by what the needs are. So I have to look at what teams and what they actually need. Obviously, a lot of teams need a lot of work, and then you got to go by the salary cap. You got a lot of things you got to think about, cool. So in my estimate, I have to wait and see who has the picks and what is needed by team.
I can answer one of the
All right.
Thompson questions if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So I
I
do
read it,
think
sir.
that, yeah, I do think that Portland sitting at 3, and depending on what goes on with their situation with their guard, is there an opportunity for them to draft that the guard, the Thompson guard there?
I'm in.
Yeah,
He plays
that's
guard.
that's the case for
small forward.
him, right? So that might be an early fit for him. But this, I think, goes back to our conversation earlier about what's happening with trades, what's happening with free agency, and waiting to see. But if everyone is holding serve and nothing's going to happen and no one's trading anyone, that still may have been an opportunity for him to join an organization and play with another guard that's actually give him some mentorship as he's going to grow. Because again, all these guys are so young as far as what's really happening for them at this point. So I think there's a situation for him where that might be a nice fit for him. Maybe not too much pressure if Lillard's still there, and maybe if he leaves, there's a little bit more expectation for him as far as we need to have some delivery pretty quick. I don't know. Again, have to wait and see. I knew more about the guard than I knew about his brother, just because I'm sort of guard centric on this. And there's not a whole lot of guards in the draft coming out. If you look at it, the higher percentage at this point seems to be wings, which are again the stretch position and the hybrid positions that are coming out of college and coming out of all of the developmental leagues at this point. So it seems to be. Most teams are going to be looking at, everyone wants to draft a hybrid. Everybody wants to draft this where you don't have those true positions any longer. But I think, the draft for Portland may identify a truer position at the guard than anybody's actually realizing that early in the draft. So I think that would be a pretty nice fit for him.
Okay. So Gene checks in. Gene says, "What's up, fellas?" Gene also answers you, Con. He says, "Plenty of them, Con. They used to come from high school. Most blue chips, I think he was saying, are one and done." He did names a few: Karl Anthony Towns, AD, Kyrie, John Wall, and plenty more. He does also then go on to say, if Portland doesn't take Scoot or Brandon Miller, their GM is going to be fired unless they trade the pick. that could happen. I think to Mike's point, they could trade the pick because there are teams that will want to go up, especially if they covet Miller or Scoot, because here's the point. The tipping point of the draft is at 2. I think if you're drafting number 3, you're taking whoever's left between Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller.
Yeah.
But who's going to be drafting at 3 is the thing, because if you're willing to move up to 3, say you're, let me pull up, because I don't want to give a team that's too far down where you may not be able to get some of these other guys you want. But say you're Houston drafting at 4. Well, let's say you're Detroit drafting at 5. That's low enough where, the jump would mean something. So you're Detroit drafting at 5. You really want to get the number 3 because you want either Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, whichever one of those guys is available. What you would need to give Portland to get them to move down to 5, maybe, swapping first-round picks and a second-round pick next year, right, to move up 2 spots. Or a young player that you may not be keen on keeping, but that can, develop and help out a little bit as like a role player, whatever you'd have to give up. So I think whoever drafts 3 is going to draft between Scoot and Brandon Miller, but it may not be Portland because Portland may say, we want to keep Dame anyway, so let's at least one more year. So let's not make a pick here. Let's, give that pick up to someone else, and then they may be there in the 5, 6, 7 range, and then Thompson may be gone, but he may be there. So I think that could make sense depending on a scenario. But if you're picking top 3, Gene, 1,000% correct. If you don't pick one of those 3 guys, whichever one is left, we know it's not going to be Wembanyama. So either Miller or Henderson, you don't really want your job unless you know something that no one else knows, and then you are a magical unicorn who everyone will be trying to steal because you're great. All right, Ian, what are your thoughts on the gentleman I named, or if you want to just name a different player, a couple of players, and where you think would be the best fit for them?
If you let me back in. There we go. Hi, there I am. Cool. So I know you guys have been looking more towards the top.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. Oh, Ian, I think you're having a little connectivity there. So Ian's we may need to leave and come back for that. We'll go through these comments. So David says Brandon Miller wants to come to Portland so bad. And then Gene says, can't hear you talking to Ian. But let's do it this way, guys, while we're waiting on Ian to get everything straight. I'm gonna ask you a couple of picks. Would be the best pick there. Now, we're gonna start with number 2. So number 2, Charlotte Hornets. I think this is a franchise-altering selection. You got Brandon Miller, you got Scoot Henderson. That's pretty much the 2 guys you're choosing from. Who do you think the Charlotte Hornets should take and why?
I like Henderson there just because of the backcourt that it could be, right? As far as who's there now, I think that'd be a nice addition for them to building that franchise. And again, you're starting looking at what's going on with the franchise, what's going on with that stability. But I do like that pick for them if they don't trade it. I like his skill set.
All right, kind of what? Yeah.
Well,
What about you, Tom?
I'm going to go with Miller only because when has Charlotte ever had, let's go back a whole bunch of years, a big or a forward that can score? Miller fits that role to me. They already done paid Gordon Hayward a ton of money, and he ain't worth it. But they got Scary Terry. I think with the addition of having a scoring forward would be so much conducive to the them of the team, and the fact, as we know, Mr. Michael Jordan is selling the team, so we don't know what's going to go on. If it was me, I'm going to go with Miller, only because his height, his length. I think he kind of reminds me a little bit of a KD. I'm not that good, but a KD who has the potential. And I think to me, it's a lot easier to get a guard than it is to get a scoring forward of the ability of a Miller. So I'm going with Miller.
All right, Ian, I know you were talking about someone later in the draft, so hopefully everything's worked out with your connection. So the question that was asked, and of course you can still talk about what you were talking about as well. But the question I also posed to everyone was, if you're Charlotte, would you take Scoot Miller or would you take Brandon? Was how to mix them together? Wow.
Henderson or Miller?
Yeah, Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller. And then real quick, Gene had a couple comments here. So Gene says, if you keep LaMelo, the pick should be Brandon Miller. If you're moving on from Melo, it'll be Scoot. I see more of a Paul George from Brandon Miller. Scoot reminds me of Russ. So I'll say this real quick, and then the floor is all yours, Ian. I think you do Scoot with LaMelo. LaMelo's not a slasher. LaMelo's not a rim attacker. Scoot is that. Scoot's going to be able to defend those smaller, more dynamic point guards, kind of like Jamal Murray and players like that. You're going to have guys like that on most teams. So I think if you go with Scoot, you get that. And I do agree that guards are easier to find, but this is a guy that's a dog, it looks like, from Scoot Miller. For everything I've seen, he's a dog. Mm-hmm. Everyone doesn't have a dog in them and the skill to back it up. He needs to work on his jump shot, but that's LaMelo's thing, right? So you get a guy who doesn't have to come in and start, but and LaMelo's been one of those guys that maybe not a lot of the season, but he's missed some games, being injured a couple of years in the league, right? So you got a guy like Scoot that could come in behind him, play those minutes, play off the ball with him, play on the ball when he's either injured or not in the game. I think that's the right pick for Charlotte because you can't afford to do what you did with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist again. You can't afford to go that route. But all you need.
If you mind me interrupting 1 second, how many picks have they had that have been failures? They got to make sure this year is the right one. And
I think Scoot's the guy that can do it.
It might be Scoot. It might be. Yeah. I don't know, but they have to make the right pick. I mean, number 2 pick, if you mess this up, there's a whole lot of problems.
Yeah. So to answer this question, I think I'm going to go with Con here. I would take Brandon Miller simply for the size. And I think just the scheme fit wise, I think Brandon Miller would fit better in Charlotte than he would in Portland. I feel like Miller would kind of get lost in the shuffle behind Anthony Simons and Dame at that point. I think if you're going to be wanting to keep Dame in Portland, I would not be surprised if you go get Scoot Henderson, develop that backcourt, and still keep Anthony Simons happy so you don't have any tension there at the 3 or 4 position. But that's just me. I also like Brandon Miller's size compared to Scoot Henderson. He's 6'2", 195. That's a little bit worrisome for me, especially in the NBA, especially when we're having guards coming out that are 6'6", 6'7". You know, we just saw it here in the finals where size does matter. You know, I just feel like Miller's size, he might need to put on a few pounds being a 6'9" frame, but I feel like his game will translate better, and I feel like he'd be more worthy of the number 2 pick. But that's just me.
We got to remember this too. Scoot Henderson has worked out with the Charlotte Hornets, and in shoes, he's actually 6'4". Why that's important is because you're essentially saying with a pair of shoes on. So he's probably really not 6'2". He's probably about 6'2 and a half, 6'2 and 3/4-ish. So you put the shoes on, you get him to 6'4". So if you can have him playing at 6'4" in shoes, that makes a big difference with the ability to drive, right? Because like I said, I think, well, Gene, here's Gene's comment, and Gene's comment sums it up perfectly. Charlotte messes everything up. If Charlotte picks Brandon Miller, then Scoot Henderson was the guy. If Charlotte picked Scoot Henderson, then they probably should have picked Brandon Miller. If Charlotte trades the pick, they're probably getting it right. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but this is not an organization that's had a lot of success with their draft picks overall. Like you hit on a couple, you hit on Kemba, right? Remember, this is a team that drafted Emeka Okafor. I think Michael Jordan, what David's saying here, facts Hornets really did. I don't blame Michael Jordan for selling the team. I just think if you're not a basketball guy at heart, like the X's and the O's side is one thing, but the building the team, the money, the putting people in place, the holding people accountable at every level of the organization. If you're not that guy, you shouldn't own an NBA team, and I don't think Michael Jordan's that guy.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely
and I think that's what's been wrong since he's been there. But let's not remember, when we were the Charlotte Bobcats here in Charlotte before he got here, Bob Johnson sucked. Everybody wanted Bob Johnson gone. Got you, Butch. Everybody wanted the Hornets back. Michael Jordan brought you the Hornets back. When he couldn't take this team that nobody wants to come play for and make them into a team that could win a championship or eventually compete in the playoffs and get deep in the playoffs, Michael Jordan sucks. You want him gone. You're going to get new owners. If they can't do the same thing, which they're not going to, unless they can find some dynamic people that are going to be able to talk some of these stars or some of these semi-stars, the second-tier stars to come into Charlotte, you're going to be talking about that he sucks and you want them to sell the team in a few years. Charlotte fans feel like they're in Atlanta or New York or LA or Texas, these large markets. Newsflash to you guys, you're not. People don't want to come to the city of Charlotte to live. They're millionaires. They have better places to go. And the truth of the matter is they're going to go to those places most of the time. So that's one of the issues that these small market teams have. That's why Denver had to build up with Jokic, Murray, Porter, and then trade for Gordon. Then start to bring in some of these other guys as second-tier players off the bench. They don't just come because, you want to pay them a little bit more. So that's, I think, an issue that all the small market teams face. But I know Charlotte has been hit by that specifically. I'm here in the market, so I hear about it all the time. And then David adds that Bob Johnson is the former owner of the BET Network. That is correct.
Yes, he was.
Yep, he definitely was. He sold that in order to obtain the to bring his renamed Bobcats to the NBA. So, guys, we had, of course, Jordan selling the team. We kind of talked about that a little bit. Did anyone else have any thoughts on Jordan selling the team?
Go ahead, Con.
Well, I think it's about goddamn time, to be honest with you. He's been there for a long time, and it's tough as an owner to try to have players that play like you. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's just a tough mix. I think he finally realized that, look, let me get rid of this team and let me go on my way, because I don't think he put in enough time and effort to make that team profitable and substantial. I think it was time for him to go. I think he felt, hey, look, it's time for me to go. He did what he did, and it was great because he was the first black owner of an NBA team. So I'm proud of what he established, but he wasn't the right person to do the job. Obviously, after all these years, you can see no major changes have been made to produce a great team, and now it's time for him to go. So whoever they get in, hopefully they'll do the damn thing. But I think it was his time. Say goodbye. He gonna be all right anyway, and that's how I feel. It was his time to get out.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. I feel like his patience, maybe it was both ways. The patience with the team and the team's patience with him, I feel were both very much coming to a rock and a hard place situation. So, I mean, obviously, we'll always remember MJ for what he did on the court, but off the court, it's hard to say that he did anything memorable, especially with the Charlotte Hornets. But I mean, the one thing that I will give him credit for, when he bought majority ownership, he only paid $275 million. The man is walking away with $3 billion. He is more than I don't even know the word, 10 times his profit and then some with this ownership. So, I mean, obviously, wish the best for him. Don't want to wish ill will. Whoever takes over the Hornets, I hope they've got a good basketball IQ and they've got a good pulse on, or a good finger on the pulse there in Charlotte. You know, do what you need to do. Don't be afraid to make some big moves to get some bigger names in. Do what you got to do to flip that team's history around.
Guys, I'm telling y'all, I hear what you're saying about Michael Jordan, but you look back through the history of the original Hornets until now. Name a superstar player that came to Charlotte.
Muggsy
was drafted by Charlotte.
Maybe Larry Johnson. Maybe Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson was drafted by Charlotte.
I mean, they let go of possibly one of the best players of all time on draft night in '96. So, I mean, that don't count.
Because he didn't want to come here. And
Yeah.
he said he was not going to come here. That's why he's not here. What I'm trying to get you guys to understand is there are no superstars that are coming to Charlotte. They are not. If a superstar is a free agent, Charlotte calls them, they hang up the phone. Okay? Charlotte reaches out to the agent says, stop playing. They're not coming to Charlotte. They're not going to OKC. They're not going to some of these places. I'm not going to keep naming a bunch of teams because I don't want to do them like that. But these small market teams, and you know who I'm talking about, the superstars are not coming. So you're already at a disadvantage in getting the top tier guys. It's not happening. So you're starting at tier 2 and you're having to pay them like tier 1 to get them to come. So the problem isn't Michael Jordan. The problem isn't Bob Johnson. The problem is you've got to find a way to make this area more appealing to those top guys. I don't think it's possible because there's too many better options out there. I just don't think it's possible. So I think you have to draft well, right? And I think Michael Jordan gets a lot of grief that he does not deserve, in my opinion. I think he stays out of the basketball because he hires people to run the basketball side.
True.
But where he falls short is the people he hires to run the basketball side.
True.
Right? Because besides talking about Mark Cuban, what other owner is really like crazy to the team besides this new guy? Yeah, besides this new guy in Phoenix, who's going to probably screw it all up there and have to hand it over to basketball people and sit down in a year or two.
I mean, Steve
When you own
Ballmer
a basketball-
keeps losing his head out in LA.
Right.
the
He
Clippers.
keeps bringing in guys, and what happens to those guys?
You're
They end
right.
up sitting down
You're
watching
right.
the games with us, right? They end up watching the games with us. So I just think we're giving grief to guys in some of these situations where they can't really win. The win for Michael Jordan is what Ian said. You made so much more money off selling your majority shares, or you will once the deal is complete. than you would have ever made as the owner. He's made this team profitable. He made it a Jumpman team. He's made the city more relevant because he's been here to talk about, right? So he's done some other things. But you just can't get the guys that you need to turn this around fast. The only way that this team will ever be rebuilt is hitting right in the draft. If they don't hit the draft, they are always going to be trash.
And
So what you tell me is they have to study and get the draft correct because they haven't in previous years. So maybe it's the team that he had. I mean, when you take a draft, you never know what's going to happen. So it's a trap.
And development too. And Con, you're a guy that you could have had some time in the league, so you know what I'm saying. Development. You come in, you're one guy. You have to have guys here to develop. James Borrego was here. Borrego was developing the team that they fired him.
But that's why, cool. I don't think you should go after these guys who are one and done. I think you got to go after the guys who have the experience, who have played a couple of years, who have learned how to play the game, as opposed to getting after year one, and then that's when development comes in to play. When you shouldn't, when you draft. You don't draft.
You know what's ironic? Con? Brandon Miller's a one and done player, sir.
Correct, but
Scoot
he's a
Henderson
player.
is not.
But cool, hear me out. He has the fundamentals of a player who's a second or third year player.
I feel you. I mean, I'm just pointing out that fact.
Good point, though. You got me on that one. You got me. Okay.
Yeah, but we're still I think looking at the mirror of Denver, right? The process that Denver has gone through, we're now trying to apply that philosophy and the methodology to other teams and other organizations. And the quick fix of a draft, the odds of that are pretty low. Right, the one and done or coming out of the development league, I think we can all agree here. It's that mixture of going out and getting free agents, having some sort of core you can rely on for a period of time, but that it's always moving, right? That you're always looking to kind of supplement your roster because you realize the window on these guys is going to be pretty short. Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? And I think we can all agree also that there are some players that are only going to be on your roster as it's being developed, right? There are guys that they can sustain you for a little while, but for those guys that you're trying to move up and you want to get into the playoffs, you want to go deep into the playoffs, those are different players. They're not the same guy that you brought in at year one and sticks with you. The odds of that are pretty low, right? So there's different stages that organizations and rosters go through over time. Right. And again, some of it is not a straight line. It's sometimes you have pauses in your development of your roster or your organization where there's injuries, there's some bad luck. So a lot of this comes into, I think, what happens with all of the small market teams where those windows are very, very narrow. The margins are very, very narrow about making the right decisions. And how many men and women out there right now that can help an organization make those right decisions? That are given that opportunity to make those decisions, because I think there's a lot of leakage from ownership, and I think there's a lot of leakage from other management sides where you don't have one person. It's a collaboration. It's a collective decision, right? And I think that gets to be the problem: is you don't have basketball people. You have a marketing person, or you have somebody else sitting in that room trying to figure out, oh, that guy can actually sell us, sell our organization through this. And it comes. Unfortunately, it doesn't come down to basketball. It doesn't come down to what the results are on the court. It's okay, and I've kind of fallen into this with Dallas. I don't think they're serious about winning. I think they're just looking to sell tickets, right? They're a novelty, right? They're sort of like this 3-ring circus. What's going on there? They're not going to win much. They're going to contend. They're going to make some noise because they have 2 great players, but they don't have a really good roster that's really going to challenge anybody, because at some point those relationships are going to fall apart at some point. You just know that with Kyrie there, that's toxic. So, but again, it's the formula that it exists is tough to execute. and to try to pull everybody into these things is really, really hard going forward. And you have to have stability from the organization. So I do, as much as Michael Jordan has been involved or not in decisions, this is a really awkward time to be executing this because, again, cool, to your point, if players weren't coming here in the first place, we now have new ownership coming in. How much does that delay any other good players wanting to come to the Charlotte area? I think that creates the pause button gets hit almost immediately today. It doesn't change the dynamic. I think in some situations it makes it worse.
And Mike, I agree with you guys 100%. But here's my point. You got Golden State. You got Wiseman. You got rid of him while even trying to develop that young talent. You got Kuminga, another one, not able to develop him to become maybe a good fit for them. And what are they going to do? They got rid of Wiseman. Kuminga got no time in the playoffs. So my point being is I think that teams have to be willing to grow, give them time and space. That's what Denver has done. If you notice, Denver has
here's the thing, Con.
develop players.
Here's the thing about that. Here's the thing about that, though, Con. You can't give them that time in Golden State because you got Steph there, you got Andrew Wiggins there, you got Clay there, you got Draymond there, right? So you can't give them the same time and allow them to grow like you could with guys in Denver. So see, what comes into play here is you're absolutely correct. And I'm not saying you're not correct, but those guys are not going to grow on that team.
Correct. You're right. Mm-hmm.
So what you should be doing is when they're having a solid season, trying to flip some of these guys to other teams for either more draft picks or some role-playing veterans that can fit into your championship window. Kuminga's was never going to be ready for a championship window. Neither was Wiseman. So why draft those guys, right? Because if you look at it truthfully, Golden State got Wiseman because of a trade, right? If I remember correctly. Was that a trade or was it the year they were really bad? It was one of the two. But they were a good enough team where they really shouldn't have had a pick that high. That should have went to a team who needed a good quality player, right? Like Charlotte in 3 that year when they got LaMelo Ball. They needed him, right? But Golden State already had Steph, Clay, Draymond. They already had all these pieces. So it's like you're adding one more piece that needs time to develop that's not going to be able to get that time because this team is too set on the championship window.
Good
now,
point.
He was in Sacramento, right? You know, that's another team. They had to go out and draft young guys. Then they traded for Sabonis and put it all together. The problem is the reason why you can't copy Denver's philosophy, like Mike was saying earlier, you don't have the same set of circumstances. Denver was willing to say, we're going to bottom out and suck.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to go try to identify guys and bring them up and let them work together, right? Jokic is what, 28? Am I right, Ian? Jokic is the oldest of the core players, and he's 28. So what I'm saying is you have to give them that time that they can't do unless you're on a bad team.
True.
So you got to be the better players on a bad team, find the gems on a bad team so they can get playing time. So they don't have, we trying to win a championship. So even though we need you to play 20 minutes a game so you can develop, we can't let you play for 5 or 10 minutes because we're trying to win a championship. Denver was like, hey, we suck. Go out there and play. All we can do is get better. Am I looking at it wrong, Ian?
But you look at what Golden State did today,
Not
right?
at all.
Who did they promote today? Right, so there's a new GM there all of a sudden, right? So you're talking about the decisions that were made, and there are some decisions that need to be made going forward. What do you do with Green? What do you do, overall with the roster? So you've got a new guy involved, which I thought was interesting because I thought at one point they were going to move the owner's son into that position, and that all of a sudden didn't happen because that looked like it was going to, and I thought that was going to be a disaster if that took place. So this move looks actually pretty solid for them going forward. So we'll see with that. But yeah, I think as you're starting to make decisions and, those previous decisions from other seasons start to come back and haunt you, and you have to kind of adjust as you go, I think has really hurt, as to your point, Cool, as far as that roster. You can't have patience there. You needed some immediate fixes to supplement to get them to another championship round and win another championship, because that window's closing.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard to have to be the guy to make those decisions too, because you try to build for the future, but you can't build too early. I think they started to try to build too early, right? You needed Steph and Clay and them to be like where they're at now. So if you can take Kuminga, some of those other guys, and flip them into picks now, and let those guys sit behind them and learn, I think that would be a better usage. Because Kuminga and those guys, Wiseman, a couple of years, Jordan Poole's already got paid. You're gonna have to pay those guys or get rid of them. So you might as well get rid of them and start over with guys from year one. But I mean, that's just what I would be looking at if I were a GM. But guys, I mean, we have plenty more things that we could talk about. But I don't think we want to do that, do we? I think we want to go ahead and give our last thoughts. And we can close up shop for the evening, and we can show up next week to talk about what happens at the draft. Anything else we want to talk about, because this is Top of the Key, and we at the top of the key making the shots. All right, so Mike, we'll start with you. Any last thoughts? Any shout outs?
Well, I want to bring up one thing, because there is a local interest with one of your players on Denver, and I think I sent an instant message to you at one point as far as the Massachusetts impact to the finals, right? So, Mr. Brown is supposed to be delivering that trophy to Dorchester, Massachusetts at some point. So there's a shout out to him that he wants to bring that trophy home, and because he still has family here and he still has some local ties here. So that's a pretty cool story, following him and getting some recognition for him. So I'm looking forward to that trophy coming home. So we'll see.
Fair enough, Con.
Well, again, Mike took my speech. But anyway, yeah, Mr. Brown is from Boston, BABC bound, and he's very welcome in Denver. They run back next year and maybe a few more years to come. But it's a great thing for him, as well as representing the Boston area. And I got to give him a shout out to my boy, Cool McCain, who called us out long time ago. So congratulations to you, my brother. And we'll be back next Friday and looking forward to it. Love Top of the Key. Love being on the show. I love the crew. Love y'all. I'm good.
All right, Ian.
Next Friday, I might finally be over this Nuggets celebration hangover. I don't know. We'll have to see how
Is that the shout out for tonight?
yeah. No, that was my pocket dial from Monday night. That was a lot of different things. Okay, so y'all know how Bruce Brown felt this morning when he went on IG Live saying Jokic got him that faded. That's kind of been us just all week. Just
I see. Okay.
Like I don't want to work. I don't want to do nothing. I just want to stay in the moment. But, I mean, obviously it's gonna wear off. Can't wait to see what obviously my Nuggets do in the draft. I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens there in the first couple picks. But obviously we'll get to it next Friday. So tune in. And like I said, I'll be a little bit more coherent next time. Promise.
Hey, Coop, one more thing before we go. I am so happy that my guy was in the crowd, Mr. David Thompson. I am so proud that he was there, and you best believe he's getting a ring. Case closed.
He's getting one. Tay's getting one. Gary's
Alex
getting
English
one.
getting one. Yep.
Are they going as deep as Spencer Haywood when he was with the Rockets? Are they going that far
I
back?
don't think they go that far back.
No.
I don't think so. Maybe
No.
I don't know.
I know. I'm that's really
like seeing
old school.
Dan Issel and Alex English at the games that they were at.
Yeah.
They had a lot of the old players. I saw LaFonso Ellis in the crowd for one of the games.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a lot of former players. And shout out to the Denver Broncos, right? You had your head coach there. You had Russell Wilson there, his wife, some of the other players. So shout out to the city showing love to each other, right? Like, I'm not a Broncos fan, but it's cool to see the
Yeah.
city show love to the other teams, right?
So what's really cool is that we cheered when Peyton was on the big screen. We cheered when Sean Payton was on the screen. When Russell Wilson and Ciara got on the screen, it was louder boos then than it was when we had LeBron James on the big screen.
Ooh.
Just throwing that out there. So
Hey,
Ooh.
Yeah, he's got,
Broncos country,
got a lot
so
of
little
making up to do.
salty.
I'm leaving that alone.
He got a lot of making up to do with the team for the way
Yeah.
he played last year. So
Yeah.
hopefully they'll put around.
Yeah.
So a couple last comments here, guys. So David says, it's funny how when an owner sells a team and when a new owner comes in, he ends up making the team much better. It's always ironic, right? And then David says, it's right, Mike, about your earlier comments about the Hornets. Sajin says, thank you, guys. Sajin, thank you, bro, because you rock with us in the comments every week. Much love
Thank
to
you.
you. We appreciate you being here, man.
Much love.
Yes, sir. And then David says, helps if I keep it up. Question, I haven't seen this ball player in a while. Where's Rajon Rondo?
He's on team 1, 2, 3 Cancun.
I think he's wearing a supermarket right now. I don't wearing a supermarket. I don't know.
I think he's at Pizza Hut getting a chicken bacon stuffed crust pizza.
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Well, everyone that's watched for the day, appreciate you. The crew, guys, appreciate you all. Appreciate Coach Dante. I know he had to cut out earlier. Next week, as we said, we'll be back. We'll go over we'll break down the draft, players who were drafted, where they went, any trades that happened. Still more NBA news. We'll definitely get to some of that next week because we can, right? And for the crew, shout out Sports Empire Network. Shout out all the shows. Make sure that you're watching Coffee in the Morning, Monday through Friday. Also, we have shows pretty much every night throughout the week. So make sure you're checking us out, man. We're getting close to college football season, so the big dogs on campus will be returning. Ian is our guy for the big dogs. A lot of great things coming. Just be ready, man. Pay attention. We're going to rock with you. We're going to roll out with the video one more time. This is some of our shows, not all of them. You don't see Top of the Key up there yet, but I believe there's going to be an updated version soon that's going to show that. But yeah, so appreciate everyone, and we are out.
See you guys.
Peace.